This video will discuss the feasibility analysis of a project. And this is very important in the project implementation process. Let us see what is meant by this feasibility analysis. Literally, feasibility analysis means whether some idea will work or not. So here, a project, whether it will work or not, whether it can be executed or implemented or not, that will be analyzed by the feasibility analysis. So feasibility analysis intends to explain or intends to do whether the project or some idea will work or not. So we have to see whether the some idea will work or not. And for that, we use the feasibility analysis. In other words, feasibility study involves an examination of the operations, financial, human resource, and marketing aspects of a business on ex ante. Ex ante means before the venture comes into existence. So before the venture or the project comes into existence, we are looking at whether the project will be worth of being implemented, or whether the project can be executed or not. So the feasibility of a project, that will be examined using certain aspects like operations, financial, human resource, and marketing aspects of a business. On ex ante, we will examine whether the project is feasible or not. So before the project comes into being or comes into existence, we are looking at whether the project will be able to be carried out or not. Feasibility is a multivariate concept. That is, a project has to be viable not only in technical terms, but also in economic and commercial terms too. Moreover, there is a possibility that a project that is technically possible may not be economically viable. So a project that is technically possible may not be economically viable. That means a project which is viable in one sense may not be viable in another sense. It simply means that we have to look at different aspects in feasibility analysis. So that's why it is said that feasibility analysis is a multivariate thing, or feasibility itself is a multivariate concept. Examination of the feasibility requires skills. That means an individual without skill cannot do feasibility analysis. Often, the feasibility analysis is done by consultancy organizations. Technical consultancy organization, TCOs, generally take up the feasibility analysis. In feasibility analysis of a project, you need to examine all the facets of the feasibility of the proposed project. Marketing, technical, financial, economic, legal, all these aspects you have to consider. First, we will discuss the market analysis. Market analysis is primarily concerned with the aggregate demand of the proposed product or service in feature and the market share expected to be captured. So how much market it will serve, or how much market share the company is able to capture. So that will be examined through this market analysis. Success of the proposed project clearly hinges on the continuing support of the customers. It is a study of knowing who all comprise your customers. For this, you require information on different things. So who are your consumers? Who will purchase your commodity? And to get information on customers, we need some information on the following aspects like consumption trends, past and present supply position, production possibilities and constraints, imports and exports, competition, cost structure, elasticity of demand, consumer behavior, intentions, motivations, attitudes, preferences, requirements, distribution channels, and marketing policies in use, administrative, technical, and legal constraints, impinging on the marketing of the product. So we need to know many things about all these aspects to arrive at a decision regarding the marketing feasibility of a project. Now, second is financial analysis. This is very important. The objective of financial analysis is to ascertain whether the proposed project will be financially viable in the sense of being able to meet the burden of servicing debt. Servicing debt means we have to give the interest rate plus the principal amount every month. So that kind of a thing. So we have to take care of, and whether the proposed project will satisfy the return expectations of those who provide the capital. While conducting a financial appraisal, certain aspects has to be looked into. So financial analysis is very important. It is very key in project feasibility analysis because the institutions providing capital to the entrepreneurs will be more interested in looking at the financial feasibility of a project. So in financial feasibility of a project, we have to consider the following things: investment outlay and cost of project, means of financing, projected profitability, cash flows of the project, investment worthiness judged in terms of various criteria of merit. Then we have to look at these things: projected financial position, break even point, net present value, payback period, internal rate of return. So these four things we will discuss in detail in this video under the heading financial analysis. No, before we start discussing these important things like the net present value, payback period, internal rate of return, you have to understand the difference between these two things. One is present value, and future value, or present value of money and future value of money. So how do you calculate the future value of money? Future value of money, which is simply written as FV, is equal to PV. PV means present value of money into 1 plus R. R is the discounted rate or simply the rate of interest raised to N. N is the number of years. Suppose that the future value of 100 rupee after 1 year at 10% rate of interest. This can be calculated as 100. 100 is a present value. So we need to calculate the future value of the 100 rupee after 1 year. That means into 1 plus 0.10. This is the 10% interest rate. So raised to 1. Raised to 1 means we are considering only 1 year. Then that is equal to 110. So that means the future value of 100 rupee after 1 year at the rate of interest 10% will be rupees 110. That means, so future value is equal to present value into 1 plus R raised to N. You can calculate it for 2 years or 3 years like that. Then now the PV. So if FV is equal to PV into 1 plus R raised to N, then you can find out PV. PV means present value. So present value is equal to future value divided by 1 plus R. R is a discounted rate of interest or discounted rate or rate of interest, R raised to N. So this is how do we find the PV, and FV is equal to, we have seen FV is equal to PV present value into 1 plus R raised to N. So this is future value of the money, and this is a present value of the money. So future value of money is obtained by multiplying present value with 1 plus R raised to N, where R is the discounted rate or rate of interest, and N is the number of years. So you can calculate the present value, that is FV divided by or FV upon 1 plus R raised to N. So these two concepts you have to know. This is related to the time value of money, which we often discuss in financial economics. So this is about the present value and future value. So these two things are very important to discuss the net present value. Now, what is net present value? Simply speaking, net present value is present value of all cash flows, cash inflows, present value of all cash inflows minus present value of cash outflows. Simply it means it is what we get, or you can say that inflow, or what the company gets, inflow. And this is the company's cost, outflow. This is company's cost and this is company's revenue, or what the company gets, that is inflow, or benefit that the company gets, or what the company gets from the selling of the product, that is inflow. And this is a cost. So net present value simply means the present value of inflows. The inflows means benefits the company gets minus cost of the project, Okay, the net present value of all cash inflows is the gross present value. The present value of all cash inflows, not the net present value of all cash inflows. That's the gross present value. If we deduct cash outflows, that means cost, from GPV, gross present value, we get what is called net present value. So net present value is simply gross present value. Gross present value is nothing but this gross present value means this present value of all cash flows minus present value of all cash outflows. We consider it as, suppose that outflows. Outflows simply means cost of the project. Let us suppose that the GPV is, let's suppose GPV is 1 lakh. GPV is 1 lakh. And cost of the project is 70,000. Suppose 70,000. Then the net present value is equal to 30,000. That's the meaning. Net present value is equal to 30,000. So you are getting means cash inflow over the years equal to 1 lakh rupees. 1 lakh rupees, but your present cost of the project is 70,000 only. Then you are getting a net present value equal to 30,000. That means, so net present value is the difference between, or is what you get after deducting cash outflow or cost from the cash inflow, from the present value of the cash inflow. Present value of the cash inflow is nothing but it is the GPV. Now, criteria to take a decision on the project based on NPV. So how do you take a decision based on NPV? If NPV is greater than 0, that means if NPV is positive, accept the project. You can accept the project. If NPV is positive, you can accept the project. In our earlier example, you can accept the project because our NPV is 30,000. You can accept the project. You are spending, your cost is only 70,000, but you are getting over a 5-year or a period of time an amount equal to 1 lakh. Then there is a surplus of 30,000. So you can go with the project. You can proceed with the project. That's the meaning. So if NPV is greater than 0, or if NPV is positive, accept the project. But if NPV is less than 0, that means if NPV is negative, your cost is high. Your cost is high, but what you get is less. Then reject the project. You cannot accept the project because your NPV is negative, because whatever you spend on a project is higher than the cash inflow, whatever you get the project. That means NPV is negative, then you must reject the project. Then if NPV is 0, NPV 0 means, if NPV 0 means, suppose that 1 lakh you are getting, 1 lakh you are getting. At the same time, 1 lakh is your cost of the project. 1 lakh is your cost of the project. Then NPV will be 0. Then also you can accept the project considering other benefits, because a project will have other benefits also. Then also if NPV is 0, then also you can accept the project considering other benefits of the project. So see that there are 3 criteria which we follow to take a decision on the project based on NPV. If NPV is positive, please accept the project. But if NPV is negative, please reject the project. And if NPV is 0, you can also accept the project considering other benefits. Now, there is a negative relation between the discount rate and the present value. So I will explain that. That means as your rate of interest or discounted value increases, NPV falls, net present value falls. So there is a negative relation between the discounted rate and the NPV. So this can be shown with the help of a figure. Here we show the NPV. Okay, this is the origin. This is a horizontal axis, x-axis. Here we show the rate of interest or discounted rate or rate of interest. Here we show it. Here NPV. So if your rate of interest is low, then NPV will be high. That means you will be getting a curve like this, a curve like this. You will be getting a curve like this. That means this curve shows that this is an NPV curve. This curve shows that there is a negative relation between the rate of interest or discounted rate and the NPV. If your rate of interest is less, you will have a high NPV. But if your rate of interest is high, this much, then you will have a less NPV. Sometimes your rate of interest, then I will explain in another slide, your NPV can be 0 also. So these are the main 3 positions. Your NPV can be positive, your NPV can be 0, your NPV can be negative. So if your NPV is positive, please accept the project. If it is 0 also, you can accept the project considering other benefits. But if your NPV is negative, please reject the project. So this is how we evaluate the feasibility of a project based on net present value. So there is a negative relation between the net present value and the discounted rate of interest or rate of interest. Now, merits of NPV. This method recognizes the time value of money. So time value of money is very important because it takes 2 things. The 2 things means it takes the present value and future value. So this future value and present value, this considers. So time value of money is taken into account. And this method evaluates the true and maximum profitability of the investment proposal. Considering the earning over the entire life of the project, the true profitability of the investment can be evaluated. You can easily evaluate the true profitability of the investment. This method summarizes the merit of an investment proposal. It determines the profitability of investment proposal in objective terms. So these are the merits of the NPV. Now look at the demerits. Demerits are, this method is quite difficult to understand. So this method is not easy to understand and operate. This method does not give good results as the projects are compared with unequal investment of funds. It is not easy to determine an appropriate discount rate because very difficult to determine the appropriate discount rate. Under this method, profitability is not related to the capital required to produce it. The project may have a high NPV, but it can still be unattractive, for it requires very high capital outlay. So sometimes we see the projects having a high NPV, net present value, but still the project may be unattractive. Why? Because it requires very high capital outlay. Means more cost you may have to spend. So because of that reason, it may seem to be unattractive despite having high net present value. So these are the merits of net present value. Now, we will come to another important concept called net internal rate of return, IRR. What is this internal rate of return? Internal rate of return is rate of discount that equals the present value of the expected future cash flow that to the present value of the cash outflows. That means here your cash inflow is minus cash outflow. These are equalized, or your whatever you get from the project, that is a benefit, that will be equal to the cost. So what happens? NPV becomes 0. So internal rate of return is that rate of return which makes your NPV 0. That's why look at this sentence. Internal rate of return is a rate of discount or interest rate that makes NPV equal to 0. NPV equal to 0. This method is very popular and is very widely used, and this is mostly used as an important profitability index in major investment projects. So simply the definition is that what is internal rate of return? Internal rate of return is IRR is that discount rate which makes NPV 0. So I will explain with the help of a figure what is the internal rate of return, then you will understand its meaning clearly. Now, in this method, so to calculate the internal rate of return, we use a particular formula. And before entering into the formula, we will just highlight what is its significance and how is it arrived. Then in this method, cash flows for income as well as expenditure are discounted to bring the same to the present value. Of course, we have seen what is present value. It is done on the logic that money received today shall not be the same amount if received after 1 year. We have seen the example that 100 rupee which we spend today will be more than 100 in the next year, because if the rate of interest is 10%, it will bring you 110 in the next year. That means money has a value, because if it is deposited in a bank, you will get a rate of interest on this amount. Now, internal rate of return is worked out by discounting the cash outflows and cash inflows from the project. The rate of discount is a result of various trials of calculations, but we need not go into the trials of calculations. We have to just understand what is this internal rate of return. Thus, the internal rate of return is worked out by trial and error method, and we will see the formula for internal rate of return here. This is a formula. Symbolically, internal rate of return may be expressed as follows. So here NPV should be 0. See here, NPV should be 0. Then, and this is the cash inflow. This is inflow. This is what we get. Or this is the present value of what we get over years. And this is a cost or outflow. This is cost or outflow. That means inflow must be equal to outflow. That is, NPV then becomes 0. NPV then becomes 0. So symbolically, IRR may be expressed as NPV 0 is equal to NPV. It simply means NPV becomes 0 when these are equalized, when the inflows become equal to outflow, or when this difference become inflow and outflow is equal to 0, then you have what is called internal rate of return. So here, this is the sum of, suppose that there are T years, then 1 to T. Suppose that there are 5 years. So each year you will be getting some money from the project. And that is calculated here using this formula. CT means, here CT means net cash inflow during the period T. CT means net cash inflow during the period T. And Z0 means total initial investment cost. Then IRR is the internal rate of return, or this is a rate of interest. Let it be 10% or 12%. This is a rate of interest. Okay, T is the number of time periods. Simply this, suppose that this is, in our example, suppose that this is 1 lakh. I have given you an example of this. And this cost also 1 lakh, suppose. So this is 1 lakh and this is 1 lakh. So what you get over 5 years, that is equal to 1 lakh, and what you spend today, that is also equal to 1 lakh. Then your NPV is 0. Then when your NPV becomes 0, what is the rate of interest? Suppose that it is 12%. Suppose this rate of interest is 12%. Then this rate of interest, which makes cash inflow equal to cash outflow, or present value of the cash inflow equal to the cash outflow. That is what is called the internal rate of return. So internal rate of return is that rate of interest which makes NPV 0. The next figure will explain this in detail. Suppose that this is, look at this figure. In this figure, along the horizontal axis, we show the discount rate or rate of interest. And here we show the NPV, net present value. So here, this is a positive region. This is where the NPV becomes 0, and this is where the NPV becomes negative. So here negative, here positive. Okay, suppose that your rate of interest or discount rate is 10%. Suppose it is 10%. Then you have positive NPV. So here NPV is positive. Okay, here NPV is positive. Suppose that your rate of interest becomes 15%. Suppose here it becomes 15%. Here it becomes 15%. Okay. Then what happens? Your NPV is 0. NPV is 0. Suppose that again your rate of interest or discounted rate becomes 20%. Here 20%. Then what happens? Here the NPV is negative. Here NPV is negative. So see, as the rate of interest increases, NPV falls. The rate of interest increases, NPV falls. When your rate of interest is 10%, your NPV is positive. And your rate of interest is 15%, your NPV becomes 0. And when your rate of interest increases to 20%, your NPV becomes negative. So see here, the NPV becomes 0 when you have the rate of interest 15%. And this 15% rate of interest in this example is known as internal rate of return. That is why I have told you internal rate of return is the rate of interest or discounted rate which makes NPV 0, which makes net present value 0. Net present value ne 0 ആക്കുന്ന 0 ആക്കുന്ന ഡിസ്കൗണ്ടഡ് റേറ്റിനെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ റേറ്റ് ഓഫ് ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിനെ നമ്മൾ വിളിക്കുന്ന പേരാണ് ഇന്റേണൽ റേറ്റ് ഓഫ് റിട്ടേൺ. ഈ പറഞ്ഞ എക്സാമ്പിളിൽ 15% ഇന്റേണൽ റേറ്റ് ഓഫ് റിട്ടേൺ, 15% ഡിസ്കൗണ്ടഡ് റേറ്റ് വരുമ്പോഴാണ് NPV 0 ആവുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ ആ 15% ഡിസ്കൗണ്ട് റേറ്റിനെ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ റേറ്റ് ഓഫ് ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റിനെ നമ്മൾ വിളിക്കുന്ന പേരാണ് ഇന്റേണൽ റേറ്റ് ഓഫ് റിട്ടേൺ. സോ പ്ലീസ് അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡ്, ഇന്റേണൽ റേറ്റ് ഓഫ് റിട്ടേൺ ഈസ് ദാറ്റ് ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് റേറ്റ് which makes NPV, net present value, is equal to 0. Now, IRR is based on the internal cash inflows generated by a project. Its most straightforward interpretation is as a break-even interest rate. So it's a break-even interest rate, it's a crucial interest rate. And while judging the profitability of a project or examining the profitability of a project, IRR should be compared with other indicators also. Now we will come to the next important means a tool of financial analysis, or the tool which is used to examine the financial feasibility of a project. That's a break-even point. The determination of the break-even point of a firm is an important factor in assessing its profitability. It's a valuable control technique and a planning device in any business enterprise. It depicts the relation between total cost and total revenue. And we have two methods to analyze the break-even technique. So we will discuss that in detail. Break-even point is determined as that point of sales volume at which total cost and revenue are identical. You know this in economics, when the total revenue is equal to total cost. See, and total revenue is equal to total cost, we have the break-even point. So that is what is explained here. The break-even point is determined as that point of sales volume at which the total cost and total revenue are identical. The break-even point establishes the level of output protection, which evenly breaks the cost and revenue. It's a level of protection at which the turnover just covers the fixed overheads and the unit starts making profits. From the banker's point of view, the project should achieve a break-even position within a reasonable time from the start of production. So every firm is expected to come to a break-even point after a certain period of time. Then only the bank will accept the project. If the break-even period is too high or too long, the bank shall not accept your project. So the project which reaches a break-even point earlier is considered as a viable project by bankers. So faster your project reaches the break-even point, better it would be. That's the meaning. Then the banks will accept your project. So if your break-even point is less or it is very short, then your project shall be accepted very quickly by the bank. Now, the projects which are unlikely to reach the break-even point in the third or fourth year of its commencement of production will not be a viable proposal for the banks. So if that simply means that if your break-even point is too long, then the bank will not accept the project. So this is an important factor in determining the feasibility of the project and its ability to absorb the ups and downs in the economy. The bankers, as lenders of funds, insist upon a reasonable margin of safety so that fixed costs are met at a fairly earlier stage. So the banks prefer that the company should come to a stage of break-even point as early as possible. At the earliest, the company should reach a break-even point. If it takes too long a time to reach the break-even point, then it is unlikely to be accepted by the banking institutions. Now, there are two important formulas being used to arrive at the break-even point. Okay, the first one decides the physical units of output. Means suppose that at which unit of output your firm reaches the break-even points. And for that, we use the formula break-even point. So first, it is in terms of the physical units. So at what units of output? Means when you produce 1 lakh output or 2 lakh output or 1.5 lakh output, how much units of output you are producing at the break-even point? That's it. So break-even point is equal to FC means fixed cost divided by SP. SP means selling price. At what price you sell the product minus VZ means variable cost per unit of output. So this is a formula which we use to find out the break-even point in terms of physical units, number of units produced. So break-even point is equal to fixed cost, total fixed cost of the company divided by SP. SP means selling price of 1 unit. VZ means variable cost of 1 unit. Variable cost of 1 unit. Take an example. Suppose that 100 is the fixed cost or 100 crore is the fixed cost. 100 crore is the fixed cost. And SP's selling price is 4. And 2 means 2 is the variable cost. So 2 is the variable cost. Rupees 2 is the variable cost. Rupees 4 is the selling price. Then you can find out at what level of output the company will reach the break-even point. So it is 2. So that means you have to produce 50 units of the output for the company to reach the break-even point. 50 units of the output you have to produce. So that's the simple meaning of this. So break-even point is arrived at using this formula. Fixed cost divided by selling price minus variable cost. And that is how the break-even point is found. Means in terms of the physical units. And next is in terms of sales volume. Sales volume, you can also find out the break-even point. For that, you have to just multiply this with the SP. So this is, if you multiply this with SP means selling price, then you will get the break-even point in terms of sales volume. So this is break-even point in terms of sales volume, and this is break-even point in terms of the physical units of output being produced. Now, here we explain the break-even point with the help of a figure. And this is a common figure which we usually see in all microeconomic textbook. You can see that here we show the volume of output in units, and vertical axis we show the cost and sales revenue, both TZ and TR. We show here, and here we show the Q or output. So this curve. Look at this curve. This is our revenue curve. Total revenue curve, and this is our total cost curve. Okay, and this is variable cost, and this is fixed cost. This is not due. This is fixed cost, which remains fixed. This is a variable cost. Totaling fixed cost and variable cost, we will get the total cost. So this line is the total cost. This line is the total revenue. So this is a point where total cost becomes equal to total revenue. So this is a break-even point. At break-even point, how much we produce, that can be shown here. So break-even point is nothing but a point where total cost becomes equal to total revenue. Now, utility of break-even analysis. The utility of break-even analysis is as follows. What are the merits of the break-even analysis? It serves as the most useful and important managerial tool. It is useful in reviewing pricing policies. It aids in planning capitalization of an enterprise. It provides the entrepreneur to decide whether to acquire or not assets involving additional fixed cost. Then what are the shortcomings of break-even point? The BEP analysis is based on some assumptions such as sales, price, cost, production, sales, etc. So it is based on the assumption we know these things. The technique will be only of financial value unless these assumptions are well calculated. So if we are unable to calculate these assumptions, then the BEP will be very futile exercise. The most important factor while using the technique, however, is a proper analysis of various costs. So you need to analyze the various costs. Break-even analysis may not prove useful to rapidly growing enterprise and to enterprises which frequently change their product mix. So if you go on changing your product mix, and if you grow very rapidly, then the break-even analysis will not give you good results. Just limited utility in case of multi-product, and it does not take due cognizance of factors like uncertainty. So it does not take care of the problems of uncertainty, risk, etc. It is not a potent tool for long-range planning. So break-even analysis will not help you in a long period. Now, next is profitability index. So how do you arrive at this profitability index? Profitability index, or PI, is equal to sum of the cash inflow divided by sum of the cash outflow. So cash inflow divided by the cash outflow. If it is one, then you can either accept or reject the project. But if it is greater than one, then you must accept the project. So if the profitability index is greater than one, the project must be or can be accepted. Now, return on investment is another concept. Return on investment is worked out by dividing the net return or net benefits by the capital employed. So net benefits divided by the capital employed. So or a rate of investment, return on investment is what is received by dividing what you get from investment. That means simply what you get from investment. What you get divided by what you put in, how much you spend, that is what you put in. That is what is a return on investment. So return on investment is simply the ratio of what you get and what you put in or what you spend. This method is simple like the payback period method. We will see the payback period method in the next slide. So this is another important tool by which you can analyze the financial feasibility of a project, that is return on investment. Now, merits of return on investment. This method takes into account the total earnings for the project. This method gives importance to the viability or profitability of the project. And since total earnings are calculated after deducting depreciation, it gives clear and correct picture of the project. What are the demerits? This method ignores the time value of money. So here we do not calculate the present value of the money. So time value of money is ignored. It does not take into account the fluctuations in the profits. Now, payback period. Payback period is the time that a project takes to generate money for itself. Or simply speaking, it is a time that a project takes to generate money. Payback period is a number of years required to cover the cash outflow invested in the project. So suppose that if you take 10 years to get the money which you invest in a project, then that 10-year period is called a payback period. The project would be accepted if its payback period is less. So if the payback period is less, you will accept the project, otherwise you will reject the project. In terms of projects ranking, it gives highest ranking to the project with the shortest payback period. Now, payback period is calculated using this formula: total cost of investment divided by annual net cash inflows. The third important analysis which we do in feasibility analysis is technical analysis. The issues involved in the assessment of technical analysis of the proposed project may be classified into those pertaining to inputs, throughputs, and outputs. Input analysis. So there are three important analysis which come under technical analysis: input analysis, throughput analysis, and output analysis. First, we will consider input analysis. Input analysis is mainly concerned with identification, quantification, and evaluation of the project. Throughput analysis, it refers to the production operations, or it refers to how the process goes on, how the input is converted into output. It refers to the production operations that you would perform on the inputs to add value. Usually the inputs received would undergo a process of transformation in several stages of manufacture. Next is output analysis. This involves product specification in terms of physical features, color, weight, etc. Now, fourth is economic analysis. Mainly, it is a study of cost and benefits. Here, the entrepreneur is concerned whether the cost of the product is justifiable vis-a-vis the price at which it will sell at the market. At this stage, it is also useful to distinguish between economic and commercial viability. Economic feasibility, not viability, feasibility. Economic feasibility leads to the unit cost of the product, but commercial feasibility informs whether enough units would sell or not. Then apart from the cost-benefit analysis, which is also referred to as private cost-benefit analysis, it is also useful to do what is known as social cost-benefit analysis. That means how much social cost, how much cost it will create to the society, or how much cost the society has to bear. So these things will be detailed out in social cost-benefit analysis. The fifth point is ecological analysis. So environmental impacts of a project you have to assess. Based on that, you can find out the feasibility of a project. So ecological analysis. In recent years, environmental concerns have assumed a great deal of significance, especially for projects which have significant ecological implications like power plants and irrigation schemes. So when you start a power plant and irrigation schemes, naturally you have to consider this ecological impact. The concerns that are usually addressed include the following: what is likely damage caused by the project to the environment? What's the cost of restoration measures required to ensure that the damage to the environment is contained within acceptable limits? The sixth point is legal and administrative issues. So when you try to start a project, you have to encounter a lot of legal and administrative issues. Then you have to see whether the project is feasible in the lens of, or means in the view of the legal and administrative issues. So entrepreneur has to be sure also of the administrative and legal issues involved in the project. These include choice of the form of business organization, registration process, clearances from authorities, etc. Then you have to look at the operational feasibility. In the execution of the project, the entity is expected to face some problems, and also there may be some opportunities arise in the course of the project. So problems are there, opportunities are there. So you have to take care of these two things. The operational feasibility is a measure of this fact only, that is the ability to solve problems and taking advantage of opportunities. So operational feasibility will look into these two things: the ability to solve problems and the ability to take advantage of the opportunities. The assessment under this method emphasizes on the degree to which the proposed project fits in existing scenario, and also the objectives with regard to the following: development schedule, delivery date, corporate culture, existing business process. So with regard to all these things, we will analyze the operational feasibility. Now, to ensure success, there are certain parameters to be considered at a very early stage of a design. These include, we have to look at the reliability, maintainability, supportability, usability, productivity, disposability, sustainability, and affordability. Now, eighth point is schedule feasibility. The time element of a project is very important. It has its own importance. It is so because a project will fail or is unsuccessful if it takes too much time to complete. So we have to complete a project within a time limit. If a project is planned to be completed within 5 years, then it must be completed within 5 years. If you take a long period to complete it, then it shows that the management is a failure. Project itself will be a failure if it takes a long time to complete the same thing. because you will not be able to reach the break-even point as fast as possible, and you will take a lot of time to reach or to get the revenue from the firm equal to the, at least equal to the amount which you spent to start the project. So therefore, it is not good for a project to go for a long period of time to complete it. So scheduled feasibility is very important. Schedule the project schedule the project as properly as possible so that it doesn't take a long time to finish it. So it is so because a project will fail or is unsuccessful if it takes too much time to complete. It means there is a need to estimate the time required to develop the system. The deadline for the project needs to be initiated, and it is also necessary to decide the desirability or whether the deadlines are mandatory. So we have to first consider whether deadlines are mandatory or not. If they are mandatory, then we must try to finish the project within the time limit. The ninth point is resource feasibility. The execution of the project requires availability of required resources. It is required to be seen whether we have enough resources or the facilities necessary for the project. So you have to see whether resources are available, means nearby the project site or not. So that's very important. So resource feasibility, the availability of resources within the premises of the project or within the reachable area, that is very important. Last is cultural feasibility. The impact of the project on both local and general cultures needs to be analyzed in advance. People sometimes oppose projects in the name of the fear that it will affect their culture, affect their surroundings, cultures, values, etc. So such types of cultural implications are studied in the feasibility study. The culture of the entity should not be clashed for the success of the project. That means you have to take care of the local general culture while analyzing the feasibility of a project. So these are the important 10 points which are very important in the analysis of the feasibility of a project. I will just rush through important points once again. The first point is market analysis. So in feasibility analysis, the first point is market analysis. Next, financial analysis. Financial analysis has many things to be discussed. So we have discussed such things. Present value, future value, that is about time value of money, net present value. Then internal rate of return. Then after that, we discussed break-even point. Then we discussed profitability index, then return on investment, then payback period. So then third point is technical analysis. Fourth point, economic analysis. Fifth point, ecological analysis. Sixth point, legal and administrative feasibility. Seventh point, operational feasibility. Eighth point, schedule feasibility. Ninth point, resource feasibility. 10th point, cultural feasibility. Okay, thank you.